Welcome to Concerning the Spiritual and Art, a podcast exploring spirituality, consciousness, and the creative process. I'm your host, Martin Benson. All right, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a really special episode for you with visual artist Nika Fontaine. Through our conversation, we just had a deep dive into our shared interests around all things spiritual, metaphysical, talked a lot about alchemy, Kabbalah, the relationship between spiritual practice and creative practice, the importance of facing our shadow, of understanding the variety of identities that we inhabit and the limitations of them. Nika talks about her transition from male to female as a part of a process of ego dissolution. That's really fascinating to think about from that perspective. Also talking about the varying bodies of work that she creates that are just, although they might be varied in technique or material, they have such an incredible thread of spiritual inquiry and practice that ties them all together. Nika and I talked a lot about like this seeking of like trying to find the core of identity that holds in relationship all other aspects of our lives. Also talking about this project called Aurigin that Nika started, focusing on bringing community together of spiritual artists, whether it's through residencies, workshops, and also having like a network of places to stay and travel to explore their work in varying locations across the earth. A really beautiful vision that Nika has, and you're going to learn a lot more about that, their work, and we just had a beautiful conversation. So here you go, Nika Fontaine. All right, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a really special guest here, Nika Fontaine, joining us all the way from Spain this morning for me, but this evening for you. And Nika and I connected, like a lot of my guests, just through social media and the internet. What a beautiful thing. And really was drawn to your work immediately, Nika, just the variety of bodies of work that you have, but also just the way that you're thinking about your art process and you're thinking about like these different bodies of work and kind of these different sort of aspects of spiritual transformation, alchemy. And you've had like a really interesting background, at least according to your bio, just transforming in your own life, transitioning from male to female, taking on a more androgynous persona as a way to perhaps dissolve the ego attachments. And I just think it's such a fascinating way to approach life and to be so authentic with who you are and how you feel. And I'm really curious to learn about your spiritual journey and kind of where you started and like how these ideas started to filter into your life and how you see it sort of evolving today. And then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think, my spiritual journey started very, very young through my upbringing. So, my dad passed away when I was 3, which kind of confronted me at a very young age to what is life, what is death.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And my mom was quite a spiritual person, so grew up with her and my brother, and she was into many kind of new age stuff. And she had a tarot deck, and I just really loved as a kid playing with the cards, not per se reading tarot, but just looking at the images. And then at some point when I was maybe around 6, she started a course on lucid dreaming, and she taught my brother and I how to do lucid dreaming from a young age.
Wow.
So dream has always been really, really big part of my life, and lucid dreaming. So it was kind of my parallel life with what I was able to travel and experience many things. Um, so that I think was very much the catalyst, but also as much as for art. So my grandpa was a hobby painter, and when I was a kid, he taught me how to draw.
Mm.
Um, but his brother was a very famous painter in Canada. So one of the first geometric painter of Canada.
Oh, wow.
Um, in the 50s, he founded the Plasticien movement, which was the first group of geometric painters.
Wow.
And so our house was just filled with paintings, and
Mm.
not enough wall for the paintings we had. And so as a kid, I was taught painting by my grandpa, and as a teenager, I went to my great uncle, and he taught me further. And another of my grandpa's brother is a monk still today, Cistercian monk. So although he was in the monastery, because he was a cook, he was the only monk that was allowed to leave the monastery to do the groceries.
Mm.
And every time he did, he stopped by and said hi, or we went to visit him. So although we were not practicing religion, there was always some kind of respect for it. And in high school, I know like all my friends, you had the choice to take a course either in moral or in religion. And all the cool kids were taking the moral class, and but I always chose the religion one by respect to my great uncle.
Mm.
And so I think that kind of shaped me from early age. And I always loved painting and drawing as a kid. Um, and after, well, the last year of high school, I started to paint more seriously and became friends with some teachers of mine from like art teachers from the school, and they really supported me and gave me lots of supplies. And
Awesome.
after high school, I just started to paint very diligently, um, with the influence of my great uncle. So he was saying, if I showed him a painting, he was saying, "Yeah, that's great. Show me the next 100. If and after the next 100, I want to see the next 1,000, and after the next
Mm.
1,000, the next 10,000." So it wasn't for him. It was not about. Well, he told me it was not about the painting. It's about the process, and just
Yes.
and so from that point, I gave myself a pretty strong, like from the age of 16, 18, I set myself a goal of making 100 painting a year at least, and um, so yeah, then I kind of since then, yeah,
You
kept
haven't
it.
stopped since, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, what an incredible, of course, it's I can't imagine like the tragedy of like losing your father at a young age, but it sounds like you had a lot of love and support around you. And especially just already kind of being born into a family in a situation where metaphysics, spirituality, religion was not something that was kind of like tainted in your mind as something negative, but it brought a sense of respect and reverence and developed a real deep interest within you toward those things. And of course, having the art mentors, it feels like everything about your karma is just pushing you to manifesting exactly what you're manifesting right now, which is such a beautiful thing to witness. And of course, like the discipline of pursuing it is what it's all about, because it can be a dream or a thought in the mind, but until we employ it through the actions of the body, it just stays there. And so that manifestation part is so crucial. And it sounds like from an early age, you were in touch with that component as well, which is so wonderful. And I'm curious, like traditionally speaking, as you were sort of developing your curiosity in religion and spirituality, was there a certain kind of teaching or idea that was really like drawing you in that you would learn about through the exposure of your family or through books that you read or even exploring the tarot? Like, was there a certain component to the spiritual process that really kind of like pulled at you in a deep way?
Yes and no. I mean, it came as a general interest, like in the early days. I remember I started university, so in painting when I was 21. I skipped college because yeah, dropped out and just wanted to paint. And but then
Mm-hmm.
after I could enter university at 21 without a college degree, and and I between so 18 and 21, I just had a studio and I was painting and some of the questions that I was asking myself, because there was also part of me that was, as much as I was in awe with my great uncle's work, I wanted to also distance myself from it, but naturally I also had inclinations with the geometric language, or
Mm-hmm.
um, but then I was thinking, like, what kind of topic can I speak about that would be universal, that would speak to everybody, and that touches everybody. And and at that time, it was my answer to that was death, um, because that, like, but not death from a. Although I had my gothic years, it was not from
Mm-hmm.
dark place. It was really from a place of understanding what is it and what is
Yeah.
afterward. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this combined with my personal story and also with the beliefs that I got from my mom with all the different New Age philosophies, talking about energies and spirit bodies and things like that. I was exploring those thematic a lot. Um, and one thing that I really wanted as well, that I try to respect the most, is that never to make a negative painting, to always try to do something with a positive feeling to it. Um, I did some negative painting at some point, but I remember like one of them that I was actually a self-portrait that I did in a very after a big party, not feeling really good, and then doing that self-portrait and this painting I was not even able to. I had to give it away to a friend who really liked it.
Mm.
Uh, I was not even able to keep it in my studio. I just didn't like the energy of it.
Interesting.
Um, and yeah, so it was these were like the early interests, but then amongst that there was also tarot was always part of it. Um, and magic. I mean, that's also I remember when I was a kid, maybe um 8 years old or so, we went to the book salon and I bought the book on white magic. So it was
Mm.
always part of my interests, as well as medicine or natural medicine and
Mhm.
plants, crystals. I had my crystal collection. So all those aspects were omnipresent or piquing my curiosity. And it's
Definitely.
eventually when I, much later, I would say that I find kind of found the catalyst for everything was through Kabbalah.
Mm.
For me, Kabbalah was the answer, was taking like everything that I've learned from different philosophies, from different fields, and synthesizing it in one system,
Mm.
answering the Bible, answering the astrology, answering mathematics, polarities, energy. I mean, and then later on, alchemy mixed with Kabbalah and well, the Western alchemy tradition.
Yeah.
And So I think this became very much the catalyst, but that was only in 2016 or 17 that I came across that. No,
Wow.
16.
When you came across Kabbalah for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it is an amazing system and it's so vast and very secret and very hidden. And I think we're so fortunate for the time that we're alive with the birth of the internet, that the dissemination of that kind of knowledge is much more accessible than ever before. Because, if we were born a few hundred years ago, depending on where you were born, your family, like you would have never been exposed to any of these kind of levels of knowledge and these initiatory processes. But it's kind of amazing that all of these sort of secret traditions, mystical traditions within varying religious sort of hierarchies are starting to emerge in incredible ways. But it also, I think it begs the question of like, how do we integrate these ideas into the modern world, especially when they're subtly divorced from like the spoken lineage of these traditions? Do you know what I mean? Like to read about Kabbalah and to practice it is powerful, but without some of the pith instructions or like the mentorships of the lineages, it's like, what is this going to transform into? Have you ever thought about that when you're researching these metaphysical sort of traditions? It's something I think about too, and I wonder, is it necessary anymore, or is the because I do believe that the infinite wisdom of the universe resides in every living thing, which is all things. So it's a matter of excavation, our ability to excavate the deep knowledge and wisdom that's latent inside of us. So do we need an external teacher who's attached to these lineages to fully comprehend the depth of them? I vacillate back and forth between them. Do you ever think about that in terms of like just the modern condition of studying metaphysics and mysticism and spiritual practice? Is that something you ever kind of like contemplate?
Um, yeah, and I would say that I have some people around me that are extremely dedicated to one practice, for instance, and
Mm-hmm.
they seek their mentor in that practice. A friend who studied shamanism, more from a Native American tradition, or another uh, medicine man in the village here who's from the Camino Rojo,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then another friend who's extremely dedicated to Kabbalah and does also all the rituals weekly, daily,
Beautiful.
uh, and another one who's more in ceremonial magic, who has also another wide range, but is still very dedicated in this practice. For me, I found it was excuse me for
No, you're
this.
good.
I will close the app. Um, I think I understand it now, actually, just since very recently I had the answer to that, which came this January, just like 2, 3 months ago. And my life has been echoing I have been jumping from one identity to another.
Mm.
And those identity have also been encompassing my interests in research of different spiritualities. And as much as I really revere the idea that if you want to learn something and really get the deep essence of it, you have to stick to one and go deep. Or even like this, what Bruce Lee was saying, I'm more scared of one person who trains one punch 1,000 times than somebody who trains a thousand punch one time.
Yep, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
But and in that sense, I felt that I didn't felt I was going necessarily deep enough in the things and just like trying so many things. And one of my ex-roommate was pointing out that out to me that she used to talk with the other roommate and saying, "Oh, okay, Nika is now in this phase," and I was just going very deep in one thing and then going to another thing, and Um, the answer came to me recently with Akashic reading session from a friend of mine. Really incredible person, practitioner, who's a somatic practitioner as well. And
Mhm.
we first had 3 somatic sessions together where I had movies running through my eyes, in front of my eyes, and very revealing in terms of inner child trauma, as well as one session was more on a past life, and and so vivid and beautiful. She has this amazing quality of not only channeling but also helping you to channel and
Wow.
just opening your channels. And the last session I did with her was something that she just started recently, and it's Akashic reading. But again, just being with her, I was also seeing a lot of things, and it was like a ping pong of insights. And one of my main question was in relationship to my trans identity, because as I'm working on a course now with a friend on that topic to help trans people to make peace with balancing the inner masculine and feminine. Um, I was, well, questioning it a lot, as well as with some life circumstances where I was questioning all of a sudden, like all of my relationships.
Mm.
Um, and I won't tell the whole story because it might be a bit long, but ultimately what it came to is that it was my life purpose to try out what she said, the word she said and heard was spacesuits. So it was to
Mhm.
try out different spacesuits
Yep.
and and that I wanted to live it all in this one lifetime with the ultimate goal to understand who I am, but from the source.
Mhm.
Uh, so not try to, as you said in the beginning, really um, go in many folds of the dissolution and calcination of the ego, and building a new ego and dissolving it, and building a new one,
Mhm.
dissolving it, in order to understand what stays in the end and what
Yeah.
is. And and I felt that this quest of finding my own identity as through those jumping from one spacesuit to another, um, or also eventually we came up with the image. It was like living on different planets. And if you live on the Earth, you know how it feels, how it smells. Um, and when you look at the sun, you don't see the sun, you just see the light.
Mhm.
Then you go on Mars, you know how it feels, how it smells, and but you look at, and now that new stage that I was entering was kind of like becoming the sun. So then all of a sudden I
Mhm.
can look at all the different items with more distance and shine my light upon them
Mhm.
without having to become them or to be pulled by them.
Yeah.
But in order to do so, having to remain very centered. And
Mhm.
that was the quest I think all along, which still is to come, but to really stay aligned with my center. And
Mhm.
so I think this is a kind of my personal journey through that. But I really, really value also and respect people who are able to dedicate themselves to one discipline and go extremely deep into it. And
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's no like perfect approach other than what's going to help catalyze this inner sort of knowing of what's connected to all things and yet beyond them, that sort of remains through the dissolution of all forms of attachment or identification that we might have with a certain persona, a certain way of being. It's like, how do we get to the core of what remains? And I think that process can look different based on the tradition, but I think all of these spiritual traditions that dive deep into the esoteric sort of wisdom are all kind of pointing to that alchemical process of dissolution and transformation into a connection with this part of our identity that is beyond the surface of what can be expressed, right? Beyond like the tangible or the literal or beyond even a sense of like any attachment. But it's this all sort of knowing awareness, this sort that kind of encompasses that's sort of like precurses all other experiences, this field of just open, unattached, clear luminosity, awareness state. That's what we're all like trying to tap into. But then at the same moment, and I think this is what being an artist for me tends to be about is like diving in and connecting and discovering and peeling away those layers, but at the same time owning this relative experience that I'm having as this person who's named Martin, who has this life story in this particular life, but trying to find that balance of not being attached to the story but owning it too at the same time. It's this weird, delicate balancing act that we have to kind of play out because I think there's something beautiful about the relative experience, but I think it's there for us to use as a tool to connect with the absolute. And I think one of the big issues that I've come across in my own spiritual journey is sometimes I find myself getting attached to the relative and identifying it as if it's an absolute and trying to remember that that too is just a relative component of my identity. And so I have to continue the excavation process and I'll probably be continuing it for many lifetimes because it feels like, the moment you tap in, a new one comes about. So it's a continual unfolding process. And I think that's what being a creative and an artist when you're exploring these things is so refreshing because you can embody that process of letting go, reformulating, dissolving. You can express it in a way that other people can relate to it and find their own sort of connection to this deeper spiritual process that's happening beneath the surface. And so it's so cool to look at your work being, all sort of connected with these ideas, but you're expressing them very differently. Like I'm looking at the painting behind your head with the glitter painting series, which are just so beautiful to look at. And the forms, the kind of like, they're kind of liquid and sort of melding, but yet they're also luminous and they're also feel very cosmic and spacious. Like they almost feel like aura fields, like electromagnetic fields of energy that are layering over each other. And then I look at some of your other bodies of work, like the calcification series, where you're like really diving into death and transmutation and sort of dissolving the ego, and there's more imagery in there, dealing with the carnal inner imagery of like the bones and the flesh and the burning and the fire of like transmutation. And then the sculptural work, it's just really amazing how you're able to maintain multiple sort of bodies of work that are all kind of like pointing to this process. And I wanted to hear from you kind of your experience, like working in these multiple bodies, because some of them kind of seem to overlap where others precursed one or the other. So I'm curious, like, what's your experience working on multiple bodies of work that are related in this big umbrella of metaphysical transmutation and transformation, but have these sort of different avenues of exploration, whether it's the sort of calcification and and dissolution of the ego and so forth.
Um, well, yeah, I've often or always worked in series, and might have been influenced also by my great uncle. I mean, he was doing. Uh, I mean, some series were longer than others, but and I like this idea of like taking sometimes what could hold the series was a narrative, or sometimes was even an aesthetic exploration,
Mm-hmm.
with still raising some questions. Um, and So the glitter, I started glitter in 2012 was the first paintings, and just before that, what led me to the glitter was I was because that was a time where I was in art school, and art school I always had an art time trying to justify what I was doing in art school, and trying
Mm-hmm.
to visualize the process, and then there was also part of me that was, well, in general, a little rebellious, and then wanted to distance myself from the path of my uncle, which was very beautiful, very
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic, and very emotional and elegant. And I started to dive since I went to study after 2 years. I went to study to Berlin in Berlin, and there was this movement of bad painting that I became very inspired by. So Jonathan Meza and Andre Butza, for instance, and just thick oil painting, just really like as bad as you can make them, then they become like better. And the very first time I saw those painting, I was just thinking, oh my God, that's so horrible. How is it possible that it's like a famous painter? And the next week, it became my favorite artist.
Wow.
So it was understanding the complexity of taste, and then good taste, bad taste. And then as I was in art school, I played a lot with that. And with my quest of always being on the edge of good taste, bad taste, fine arts, hobby art, and which I think also eventually you can say it's a mirror of my identity and my personal quest, from male to female, finding the balance, not identifying necessarily as neither nor, uh,
Mm-hmm.
finding that in between, and the idea of uh, judgment that we pose upon things. Um, and glitter came first as a tacky hobby element that I've used on painting, but quickly I realized its potential in its activation qualities.
Yeah.
So, with the light and the movement, the painting suddenly becomes alive. And when I started to use it completely, without combination of oil or anything else, it became a material of its own, and it lost some, maybe not all, but lost some of the connotations that we might associate to hobby art or
Mm-hmm.
glam, or I don't know.
Yeah. like
And
decoration or just kind of, yeah, like I think hobby art's a good word too.
and and also what I realized is that actually it was fulfilling a craving to have extremely vivid colors and colors that I wasn't able to get in oil or acrylics, and colors that were actually closer to the colors I could see in my dreams.
Hmm.
That was the that was one of the intention. Um, and in regards to all the thematic, so every series had an exploration. Then in 2011, I did a series on tarot and exploring um, different arcanas. And the series behind me is a series called Akasha, and it was a series on um, the well, I wanted to paint the birth of consciousness in a
Wow.
way.
Mm.
And so there's different stages throughout the series, and this you can say it's either the beginning or the end.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
Very much a very singular painting, but I have other ones where it's called Seed of Light. So it was starting as a seed, and then mitosis spiritualis, almost that seed, like this the cell separation,
Yep.
and going to more complex structure eventually that were called the transmutations, and almost becoming body-like, but
Mm.
a soul-like, so astral
Yeah.
body. And so that was one exploration where at the time I was very much interested in Kabbalah. So there was also within some of the titles you can see hints to Kabbalah.
Mm.
But linked with, I mean, Akasha, well, then the Hinduism, and then the
Hmm.
fifth element and the element of space, and but space from a normative point of view. So like all is in the all, and the all is in all, and then
Yep.
um, so all linking, I mean, many series have those influences, and sometimes it was just according to some things that I just came across. So there's the last series I did in 2018 with the glitter was inspired by a healing technique from one of my favorite alchemists, which is called La Trame.
Mm.
Uh, and it's about basically waves, like how to generate waves in the body in order to let the information circulate and remove the blocks.
Mm.
But then this had a relationship with um, well, the aura and just the body as a energy field.
Hmm.
At the same time, I was listening to some interviews with Gregory Grabovoi, who had like was writing sequences of numbers that if you just meditate upon the number sequence, it would have different impact.
Mm.
And and then thinking about those number sequences frequencies that could be translated in wave, and then just understanding that it's all this one and the same thing with different language and iterations.
Yes.
Um, and I think this is something that you see throughout my work. So there is, even though different bodies of work, different aesthetics, there is always this same quest of understanding what is the unifying field, and sometimes expressing it with some insights that I just picked up along the way. And
Wow.
the last bodies of work, the calcination and the dissolution, these are different in the sense that it's a longer process, it's a series of series that I started. So it's going to be the seven alchemical transmutation steps, and
Hmm.
interpreted in a series. So so far I did the two first stages, and the third one is about to come soon. And
Wow. Well,
that's a
I love the way that you're thinking about it, though. The way that you're like exploring the outer like sort of differences, but finding the unifying principle even within them. And I definitely can see that happening. That's why I was drawn to your work and just your approach to doing it, because it feels very like an authentic quest, and it feels like a very authentic sort of translation of an individual's experience, filtering this kind of information through your body, through your mind, through the energy that you have into the work that you're creating. And I really love what you mentioned at the very beginning, how you always want your work to focus on the positive energy and stay away from the negative energy. And I'm wondering if we can maybe dig into like how you do that, because sometimes, because I feel like we are a culmination of the duality, right? We have both dark and light inside of us. And it's about how we find the unifying principle of those dualistic frameworks and how we go into non-duality, which is also kind of mirrors in your own experience of transitioning from male to female, figuring out how to embody this unified principle, but still not negating that there's one and the other a part of that relative quote unquote experience. But I'm curious, like, how do you, when you approach making your work in terms of channeling that positive energy, do you have any kind of rituals, prayers, any sort of practices that you do to kind of get your body, mind in alignment with that kind of positive vibrational frequency so that you become a channel of that kind of energy? Or is it something that you're just constantly trying to like stay aligned with? I'm just curious if there's any kind of personal rituals that you've created in your studio practice, in your creative practice, that helps you like in a tangible way manifest that intention before you begin working.
Yeah, I mean, before to answer that, I would just say what my Kabbalah teacher was often saying, like in the more darkness there is, the more potential to reveal the light. So, like in the deepest darkness, that's where you have the most light. And So with that in mind, I mean, I like everyone, I went through my dark times, or I have like dark days or moments, or also dark shadows that are not fully integrated or recognized, or and and also even like the skeleton paintings might first appear dark because it's like burning skeletons, which would be a traditionally dark image. But I made sure to also within those images, if you just look closely, you see that those burning skeleton have either the third eye open and or the heart and or both. Um, and then by recognizing that, then you understand that it's a process of purification rather than
Exactly. Yeah.
and within the last series, there was many dragons within it, and those dragons came about through meditations and the meditations I did with my friend, somatic teacher. And I had these movies passing in front of me, and I saw all those different dragons, which I thought at first I was like, well, I just watched too much sci-fi and fantasy, and uh, and I was afraid to just tell her what I was seeing because I thought it was just my silly subconscious playing weird movies. But as I was just explaining, telling her what I was seeing, it weaved a very precise narrative, and it just turned out to be my inner language. Using those references of and um and the very first painting of the dissolution series is a red dragon that the energy is very intense, and in that meditation was its name was the destructor, which is the name of the painting, but the destructor referred to the stuck emotion that weren't able to be released. And for me, the dragon was the symbol of the mythical creature that had the creative potential, but through the breath and the fire, this destructive potential or creative potential,
Yeah.
the might of the expression of emotions. And it went from the red one to the blue one with three heads, like more Hydra-like, which was the dragon, then water, emotions, and then the blue again, the expression. And from the blue one, it became a golden one, where when it spit fire, there was flowers growing. So it then was from the destructor to the creator, but body of the dragon.
Yeah.
And this leads me to say that basically meditation for me has always been key. So I get most of my images, compositions through meditations. And the process was slightly different with the glitter paintings as with the oil ones, because the oil ones are very slow. And so I would meditate until I see the image. And when I have the image, I just draw a quick sketch to later on make it. Necessarily looking at the sketch as I make it, just to have an idea of the composition.
Yeah, definitely.
And the glitter painting, because of the technique, I had like a maximum of like 45 minutes to make each painting before the background would dry.
Oh, wow.
very action painting.
Hmm.
But because of that, I couldn't hesitate, and I needed to have a very sharp and clear mind, or you could say, um, not hold on my mind at all and just have a clear channel.
Yes.
And thus I was meditating until I could feel that point where I would just reach this emptiness. And when I reached the emptiness, then I would start painting. And
Yeah.
then
Wow, that's beautiful. I can totally relate to that. Like, because we have to find a way to like settle the energy in our bodies so that those channels can open, so that
mm,
we can, like, I like how you talked about purification. And sometimes people can think of like purification practices as like being super austere and super like kind of like separate from the world and better than and trying to be like I'm more pure than that, but it's like that's not what it's about at all. It's just it's a continual process that we can see reflected in nature through the seasons. That's a purification process, right? And
yeah.
so as vessels of this kind of divine energy of the consciousness, we get clogged up all the time because of the relative experiences we're having. And so practices like meditation, deep breath work, prayer, contemplation, movement, varying movement modalities or energetic modalities, they really help to empty. Like I love how you use the word empty, because a lot of people are afraid of that word empty because they kind of equate it with like meaninglessness. But like this emptiness is just pure potentiality. And
Mm.
it's like the emptiness is the field of infinite potential. And so we have to, through the meditative process or purification process, we return back to that emptiness so that then we become that hollow tube, that channel that the energy can move through us. We're no longer impeding that process. And the fact that you have to work so quickly, you really have to trust yourself. And so it makes perfect sense to like take that time to settle the energy, to let it clear, like mud clearing down to the bottom of the water, right? To allow, there's the thunder. I don't know if you could hear it on your end, but to allow that to happen, it's so beautiful. I can relate to that in my own practice, meditation, and spiritual practice, energy work, prayer, all of that has always been a huge component of my life. And as an artist, I'm always trying to find ways to let go more and more, empty more and more, so that I can just be trustworthy of this creative process and not try to get my ego so involved in making all the decisions all the time, but like let the intuition, let the spirit inside make those decisions. And I think it's kind of cool with the glitter paintings, how you're already set up with some kind of limitation of time. So you don't have the luxury to overthink. You don't have the luxury to second guess. You have to just fully surrender to the creative energy and trust that process. And I think and it's hard for us as artists to do, and something I want to do more and more personally in my practice is letting go of some of those control parameters, because that's where like the magic I think starts to really happen, is when we can learn how to get out of the way. And sometimes I think that's what all of the rituals are all about, is setting ourselves up so that we can get the fuck out of the way and let the divine wisdom and consciousness do what it's supposed to do. Um,
Mm.
but the ego always finds a way to get back in and try to hijack all of that. And so we have to keep almost like the night watch, constantly aware of the ego process, so that we can, because that dissolution process, I think, is a every moment process in some ways related to the ego, like always catching ourselves when we're being judgmental, when we are being attached, when we are trying to create a sense of hierarchy of better than or greater than anything else. We have to constantly be on watch to let that go. And I know personally in my life, the more I practice that, I think the more effortless that process seems to become, and it's beautiful and it's life changing. And I think the work that you create from that place, that's where the positive energy I think comes from, is because you are conscious of the shadow and the tricks it can play, right?
I think that's the key. in that ideal of wanting to make that positive painting is not trying to portray, not celebrating the negative, but not being afraid to show it as well.
Hmm.
So it's not avoiding it as well, because that's not
Yeah.
good per se. Um, but um, but if I want to tackle a art topic, then trying to see it from a different point of view. I mean, I had this one piece that had multiple layers to it, but well, I did it just when I did my gender transition, and it's a sculpture slash installation, and it's a big coffin that I just yeah build the whole thing, and it's called Pimp My Ride to Heaven,
Mm.
and um, and it looks like a car that is like tuned with the neons underneath and the
Yeah.
speakers and everything, and with flames painted. So it's kind of
Wow.
funny, but it triggered quite a lot of people in the exhibition, especially one guest who 2 days earlier was in the funeral.
Mm.
Um, and and for me, it was like burying a part of myself, but it was also understanding that I like the idea of the title. Not only was it funny, but it was also this idea of pimp my ride to heaven is if you see the ride as your life, your journey, and then it's like, how can I improve my life
Hmm.
till the point where I reach heaven?
Mm.
And and understanding that this is an inevitability that and might as well make it like fun and
Yeah,
celebrate life through not fearing death. Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
Also, I think this comes from different beliefs. I mean, some people that might not have such a connection to the spiritual might be more wary of death as a
Hmm.
man. If you see it just as a passage and transition, then it's not as scary. And
It's very natural, isn't it? Everything does it. You know what I mean? It's like the
yeah,
fear of death. I mean, ultimately, we will know if we're ready for. I think most spiritual practices, from my personal study and experiences, is really all about preparing for that moment of death. It's about really preparing the consciousness to fully let go and to merge with the mystery of the transformation that happens at that point. And
mhm,
it's very natural. Everyone does it. Everyone's done it. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's interesting. Our culture has developed such a framework of separation, of fear, of a sense of like avoidance toward these kinds of topics, which ultimately I think hinders us and our consciousness whenever we become confronted with that moment, because we all will. Like you said, it's an inevitability. And so we might as well get used to it now while we're alive, as opposed to putting it off until the moment of death when we're confused and scared and not sure how to approach it. And um, for me, because death is just, it is transformation. It's a part of this purposeful cycle of evolution of consciousness. But I can also empathize with people who have trauma around it, who have had traumatic and deep loss, to be very fearful. And so I want to hold that with a lot of grace and compassion. But also you got to cut through it.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a big difference as well between death and violence. So that's uh,
Hmm.
and not to mix both, and as well grief and attachment, and it's that's also another different topic. Um,
Hmm.
but under not fearing the moment itself, I think also helps you to not hold not attach too much importance to your own ego while respecting it. It's like understanding, okay, I'm here for this ride and in that spacesuit and I might as well do my best and make it a beautiful journey. And how can I make it a beautiful journey? Well, okay, I can indulge in all the pleasure, but it's not very fulfilling.
Exactly
And
right. It withers.
yeah, and I mean, what I like from Kabbalah, the term Kabbalah means how to receive. And so it's the wisdom of receiving. But the true way of receiving is like, is receiving in order to give. And then
Yep.
And then how can you expand your vessel so that you can receive more, so you can give more? And
Exactly.
by understanding that and say, okay, how can I expand my personal vessel so that I'm able to give even more? And then just understanding that this act of giving is the most fulfilling,
Yes.
then it can lead you to create a life that is in service and and enjoyable and beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
I think,
amazing.
and just to go back to that, like short comment on what you were saying with the mind playing, always battling with the mind as we work, and I think this is also a very tricky thing as if you when you engage as a when you start to uh, make of your art practice a job as well. Because then you're confronted to not only the art market, which is a celebration of the ego, and then you put your name out there, and your name is connected to a value, and then trying to raise the value always, so trying to boost your name, as much
Mm.
as trends and as much as sometimes the market restrictions.
Yeah.
So there is a component of I always was fascinated by the outsider artists
Mm.
for the quality of their work, but also from the freedom that they had,
Hmm.
where the work was not intended for any commercial purposes, and you could feel it in
Yes.
in the craziness sometimes of the things that were produced and or in yeah marginal and authentic creation.
Definitely. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That authenticity is what it's all about. And it's just about being fully connected and honest with who you are in the moment and being able to continually let go and again be that channel. But I think it's such an important point that you bring up about the bolstering of the ego, the art market, and the paradox of like being an artist, especially if you're trying to find sustainability in your practice where you can have more time to do it because you have support to be able to do it. But there's a balance to be struck there. And some artists, I think, can do that very successfully, and some the ego becomes so inflated that they lose themselves in their work all of a sudden, even though it might continue to sell and have perceived value, the artists suffer a lot. And that's why you see a lot of suffering artists, tropes out there, because on some level, maybe, they know that they're kind of selling themselves out to what this journey is all about in the first place, because all of these things go away. Nothing's permanent in terms of fame and notoriety and material success and so there's a deeper purpose, and it's the transformation of consciousness, and like to your point, to be of service, I feel, is the greatest purpose in life, to become the greatest vessel for that energy to move through you, like what you're saying with the Kabbalist notion of becoming like the creator, and that you become a vessel to receive in order to give, just like the creator gives, so to speak. And to me, that is, in my personal life, that is the greatest aim, is how to do that. Everything else, the relative success, the sustainability. Yeah, I have kids. I'm a father. I have to provide. I have to be able to keep them safe and healthy and all of that. And so, yes, would it be nice to be able to do that through art? Of course, but is that the ultimate purpose? For me, no. Like, art is a life path. It is a teaching. I'm an artist, quote unquote, in this life in order to learn certain lessons I need to learn. And so that I can fully find my authenticity. And I sense that's exactly what you're doing. And it's so beautiful to be able to connect with you in this shared space, because I feel like even though our work might have varying differences, I think the core of the mission and the interest is very much aligned. And I feel so grateful to meet you and to be able to hear from your experience. And one of the things that I see you doing that I find that I'm interested in too is this. I think you're a founder. And I might pronounce wrong. Is it pronounced Origin?
Yeah.
AUR? Is that how you pronounce it? Origin? Like this sort of collective community of like-minded seekers and creatives that support each other and work together for these kind of deeper spiritual aims that we've been speaking to. I was wondering if we could learn a little bit about that, the creation of that, the intention of that, and the kind of work that goes in to that community.
Yeah, well, um, so origin written AUR because or in Aramaic is the light, so it's
Yep.
the origin of the light. And so the idea was came, I think, more or less in 2016, 17. And it was basically where I kind of had I was less satisfied with the idea of just making art and putting it in the art market, although it was still I was interested in doing that because I could see that I was able to touch people as well through
Mhm.
my work. That my art is also a good channel for me to express or to get information or but I also wanted to have a pragmatic impact directly on people. And then I also, which is less true nowadays, but it still is to some extent. I felt that spirituality in the art was a bit taboo or at times frowned upon. I think it changed from the moment of the Ilma F. Clint show
Yep,
in
definitely.
time was kind of like the turning point. But still, there is still some in some circles might be uh, yeah. I mean, in some ways it's kind of cool at the moment, but I don't know if everybody goes to the depth. It's still better that there is an openness to it.
Definitely.
So it was the idea of like, how can I make sure that spiritual art has a as is being perceived for its just value in the art
Mhm.
scene, as well as creating a vessel for creators in order to connect. And then this idea of creating this center in nature, so art residency, where artists can come create, and then through that project build a bigger network. Eventually, maybe have a gallery as well associated with it. And as the project developed, then it reached. I mean, it was the focus was art and spirituality, but um, so the spiritual aspect and educational aspect is also evolving with time and with friends or myself or with invited teachers. The idea is to also host retreats, so different
Mhm.
courses. And but in between the course season, have artist residency time.
Yeah.
And now I've been in the last 3 years building that place.
Beautiful.
Physically, the house was a ruin, and so I had to do everything, and which is a beautiful process. I am, and I've been learning a lot just by doing that. And one sentence that kept running in my mind was before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood,
Yep.
carry
Carry
water.
water. Yep.
That's really what I have to do here. I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of a national park, and my neighbor is 2.5 kilometer away, and I need to go carry my water and chop wood for to heat the house and yeah, build a house.
Where is this place? Like what part of is it in Spain or it's in
Yeah,
Spain?
it's close to Valencia and
Oh, cool.
not far from the coast, 20 minutes from the coast. But
Beautiful.
and there's a river just by the house and lots of waterfalls. And this place has a very strong energy, from
Mm,
what I've heard from other people, as well as what I can recognize for myself, is that it's not per se a good or a bad energy. It's just very intense
it's
and it's kind of
potent.
a magnifier. So the house, also because it's very remote, feels a bit like a pressure cooker
Mm,
for whatever you have inside, which
mm,
ultimately I think is a good thing.
definitely.
But if you're not ready to confront yourself with your shadows
Hmm.
and to whatever comes up, then it might be challenging.
Definitely.
But I've seen some beautiful transformation already with some guests that I had, and how, yeah, this process of
Wow.
unveiling was very potent, even without the courses, just by giving the space. And the house is almost renovated, almost finished. So soon I'll be able to start the courses and run more the residency. But the whole project also from the start, it went like a snowball, and I had that vision of making more than one center and having
Mm,
the. So the plan is to have, well, this center in Spain, one in Canada, and another one most likely El Salvador or Mexico. And
mm.
if there's more, that's great. But it was the idea of creating a network where also to facilitate mobility for artists and digital nomads or teachers. And by remaining in that ecosystem, there's a whole other startup adjacent to it, which is just a real estate portfolio using blockchain for co-ownership. But you
Yeah,
can, as you rent rooms, you acquire shares. So if you live always within that ecosystem, you kind of always, instead of just losing money on rent, you always buy shares of the portfolio and yeah, and facilitate mobility as well.
I
So
love that. Wow, what a beautiful vision that you're manifesting. And I think there's so much alignment in terms of just, I don't know, it's interesting the time we live in. I love how you pointed to like the traditions of spirituality and metaphysics being a part of like the creative process have been snuffed out of the art markets and the art scene for a long time. But now, because definitely the Guggenheim show of Hilma's work, and then everything coming after that, has really opened the doors to these conversations in ways that I think are so important. Which is what catalyzed this whole project that I'm doing. Like the whole reason I'm doing this podcast is because I want to create this network and community and connection to artists who are thinking and exploring and experimenting and experiencing the same sort of ideas and that we're talking about today, and really to illustrate to an audience that this is not a fad or a blip. Like this is part of the human experience and history from the dawn of wherever we came from. We've always been interested in these things. Art has always been a tool for us to express our spiritual relationships, connections, mythologies, our stories. And it always will be, even if there was a swatch in time where it kind of got snuffed out. You can only do that for so long because the power is too immense. And
mm.
so I feel what you're doing, wow, this sounds so exciting and so aligned. Maybe we'll have to figure out a way to get one of those centers in America too, because there's a hunger here that I can sense in the United States for people to discover to have spiritual yearning.
Well,
Um,
I was just in Canada last month and I met a friend that I wanted to convince actually to help me build the real estate business because it's a bit I don't have much experience in just proper like business marketing.
for sure.
Yeah, and he does. He's very skilled and aligned as well with the mission. It's been 5 years that I was trying to convince him, and I think I finally managed. But he said like, well, if you say you want one in Spain, one in Canada, one in El Salvador, because there's a project that I really like there, so I would like to join with them.
Mm,
Mm. He says, well, then I want one as well in New Orleans, and I want one in the other place where he was mentioning, I think is I don't remember the city exactly, but it's on the West Coast in the US as
mm,
well. And and yeah, he had a couple places where he wanted.
yeah,
So
I
most
love
likely,
that.
and then yeah.
Well, I used to live in New Orleans I lived there for 14 years. My family's all from there. I recently moved just because of my family and our circumstances. It was time for us to move, but I'm in New Orleans a bunch. I know a ton of artists there, and it's definitely an amazing, talk about like an energy, if you've never been there, it's a very incredible, potent place as well,
Hmm.
energetically. But I think that's exciting. I think continue to work on the one in Spain and continue to build it and let it, and people, it'll attract the right people. I just feel like when your intentions are aligned, when the vision is crystallized, but still open-ended, you know what I mean? Where you're not so attached to the vision that it can't evolve. The universe works its magic to bring people together, especially who are like-minded. I think, like energy finds like energy. So I'm here full of support of what you're doing. And we can talk later, but if there's ever anything I can do to help support that mission and that project, I would love to find a way to support it and be in service to that vision, because I hold that vision too in some way in my heart. I haven't seen what it looks like, but I know it's there. This feeling of how do we build community and connection across boundaries, across identities, across all sorts of delineations that we create that are completely made up, that separate us, and create a unifying sort of arena where we can fully like connect with our deepest, truest self, and build a world that is counter to the oppressive tendencies of the current one that has been manifested. Because it's obviously showing that has its great limitations, and we can see the earth shaking with the need for transformation. And I think it calls upon us as individuals to live through that, to live that individually, but then to seek out connection with one another. And I think that's what brought us together today, to have this awesome conversation. I mean, we've been talking for about a little over an hour now, and I know we could probably just continue to talk, and maybe down the line there'll have to be a part two to this dialogue. But I just want to extend my deep gratitude to you, Nika, for connecting and for taking the time to share with me your insights, your journey, and your approach to the work that you do. I think it's absolutely incredible, and I'm just inspired by you as a person and the work you're creating. And I'm here rooting you on 100,000,000%. And so everyone out there that's listening, definitely connect through to Nika, through to Aurigin. I'll have all the links in the show notes. Make sure you follow Nika and Aurigin on social media and just stay connected, because I think there's a lot more to come. So beautiful, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for everything you do as well in the podcast. It's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. More to come. All right. Peace, y'all. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Concerning the Spiritual and Art. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch and in tune with all the amazing offerings that we're going to be bringing to this channel. Thanks again for all your support. Super grateful, and excited to bring more content your way. Peace, y'all.